We have tonight 3 interesting companies here to present. It was made last week actually, thanks to Mona, who's somewhere around here, set it up and said 3 interesting companies in this space are available for presenting their projects, and they're now here. Basically, I know as little as you guys, so we will just leave it to Aragon to introduce the rest, and they will have about 5-10 minutes each, and then we will have a public Q&A, and networking afterwards. So please keep quiet, because usually there's a lot of noise in the background and people can't hear. If you need to talk, go outside. It's nice and rainy. So have at it. Welcome, guys, and thank you for coming.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Soren, for organizing all of this last minute, and Mona for making it possible. So as Soren said, we are pumped to have one of the my personal favorite projects right now in the space, all in the room. Also, Melon is here, but they are not they're really here, so they're just seeing us rock the stage. And we have AKASHA, who is awesome from Mihai, one of the co-founders of Ethereum, and we have Status, which is one of the best designs dApps in the space, and it's pretty amazing. So I'm really pumped to be part of this. And then we have Aragon, which is Kirk and me, and we are gonna talk about the AOs at the end of the on what we are building as well. So welcome Mihai to the stage. He will talk about AKASHA.
Hello everyone. Wow, quite a crowd. Before we begin, I'd like to ask how many of you have heard about AKASHA or tried it before? Okay, quite a few. For those of you that don't know what AKASHA is, it's a social media network powered by the Ethereum blockchain and IPFS, the interplanetary file system. Basically what we aim to do was to experiment and see if we can use these new technologies to solve a really big problem on the internet that wasn't solvable until now. And we did some searching, we did some soul searching, and after a while we figured that censorship is quite a big one. So we began experimenting without telling anyone what we were doing for a while, until early 2015. And by then we had a working prototype, which in May we announced. We opened the alpha sign-ups to test the alpha. We are currently very happy to say that we have AKASHA serves as home for over 3,000 people that have created their own identities that they are fully owned by themselves. And we have been able to provide a free channel of expression for over 5,000 articles published in a completely censorship-resistant fashion. So in other words, the first stage of the experiment is a success, and we have proven that the idea can work. Those of you that resonate with the idea of freedom of expression and privacy are encouraged to visit akasha.world. And from there, you just click the download alpha version. It works on Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. We're looking forward to seeing you on AKASHA and on our Slack.
All right, hi, Jared here from Status. Show of hands who's actually heard of us? Fantastic, that's great. For those who don't know, Status is a sort of mobile Web3 hybrid browser and messenger. If you played with Mist at all on desktop, we're aiming to be sort of Mist for mobile. So the idea is that you can browse these sort of dApps, HTML5 dApps on your phone. Obviously, you can transact via your wallets and do sort of payments. It was originally, we got this sort of dev grant from the foundation to port Ethereum J over to Android devices. And at the time, we were actually syncing the full blockchain. As you can imagine, your phone gets quite hot and you don't have too much disk space. But we actually did manage to get it running on a smartwatch at the time, which caused some wrist burns, but you know, it's okay. Thankfully, like we've been developing in parallel with the Go Ethereum team, and they have now gotten to the point where there's a light client protocol, and it's working really, really well. So we don't have to do that anymore, and we can actually be a real decentralized node participating in the Ethereum network on your device. So there's no servers, there's no middlemen, no sort of trust required. Then, like, as we were developing this, we were kind of thinking, okay, how can we maximize the surface area for Ethereum adoption? I mean, we're all crypto nuts in here, like we have some kind of tokens and like we like to play around with them, but everybody out there, they have no idea what we're doing, right? So we basically sat down and we were like, okay, how are people using their phones? How are they kind of interacting with the world? And it turns out, if you look at the sort of traffic analysis and user analysis over all the sort of apps that are out there, you have messengers as being the most monthly active users. In fact, it's 3 times the amount of browsers. And that's really indicative of how people are communicating with their devices. So for us to maximize the surface area, what we really need to do is have a familiar user interface that people can interact with for free and don't even necessarily need to know anything about cryptography. And so Status started to turn into more of this messenger sort of format. So yeah, we've been building that out, but a large component of that is this sort of trustlessness and privacy and sort of freedom of speech that we need to touch upon. And there's some other reasons which I'll go into about in a moment. I'm kind of doing this all off the fly because I don't have my slides, so bear with me. Yeah, so, where am I? Something about privacy. Yeah. Okay. So like if you
Nothing important.
yeah, nothing important. I'm so used to it these days. It's like so basically we have the Ethereum blockchain and we're using that constantly to do our sort of transactions over. That's kind of solved the money problem and it solves this sort of smart contract problem. But then like because we have this sort of messenger, how do we solve that as well? Does anyone know the other 2 protocols that are part of the Ethereum web stack and not these guys and anyone? Sorry? Yeah, Whisper and Swarm, exactly, Whisper and Swarm. For those who don't know, Whisper is a decentralized, dark routed sort of messaging service, and it has a lot of really interesting privacy properties. The other one, Swarm, that was mentioned, is a distributed file storage, so you can upload your photos or audio messages and that sort of thing. So we've kind of combined them all together and really put them into this sort of nice little package. And now we're just kind of working with other people in the space, any sort of dApp developers. They can browse directly on the phone to these particular dApps. And we're rolling out an API soon, so you can actually integrate with the chat context and make new commands and that sort of thing. But there's also this other problem that we've been thinking about quite a lot. And if you start looking at like other sort of social networks and other kind of applications, they're kind of scary because there's this sort of, what seems to crop up quite frequently is a sort of social network. It has a particular owner, it's the company. They have to try and monetize essentially this free service. And so they end up creating this sort of advertising platform for advertisers to come onto. Now you essentially have 3 parties. You have the advertisers, you have the company, and you have the users. And unfortunately, the incentives don't necessarily align very well. So what we would like to do is flatten that out. We want users to be owning and operating the actual network, having control over the software that they're using to communicate with their friends and their loved ones. And I think as we do that, we can start to create new and unique sort of trustless ways where we actually have control over our daily lives beyond just our financial sort of whatever. Anyway, I think that's it. So thank you for having us.
So I'm Luis from Aragon. I'm going to start with the same question as everyone else, I guess. How many of you know Aragon before? Yeah. Cool. So we basically are a way to manage and create DAOs. A very easy way. We try to make it as easy as operating a company, or even easier. So we have like a cap table, a voting system, a role system, a fundraising kind of thing. So you can like do either private token sales or public token sales, which is very funny because people used to like IPO paying like some millions to some random banks, and now they can like do something similar with like 5 clicks, which is pretty amusing. And we also have like a very cool bylaw system, so you can customize basically customize your company or your organization to behave as you really want it to, and to make your organization work for you in new ways. So you want to be like of how a DAO works. So a lot of projects in the space they want to use us for governance. It's an easy tool. You can download it for Linux, Mac, Windows. We also have a web version that we just released. It is really easy. Like you can literally create your organization in like 3 clicks, and it works for mostly everything. You can create like an NGO, you can create a company, you can even like create your marriage and like assign 50% to your bio and 50% to yourself, and it also works because you can like customize the bylaws. And then voting and governance is a very tricky issue there. I won't get started on that. And so. Yeah, we're focusing on that. We're focusing on making it very, very easy, and also kind of being like the common protocol for all the DAOs to talk to each other. Because it would be really cool to live in a world in which we have all our organizations, and for example, we can have something similar to like angel list for decentralized organizations, and you can like trigger events like, if this token from this organization has been used more than 10 times a day, put some money in their token sale, whatever. That kind of stuff can be done now, which is pretty amazing. Not by lawyers and like vampires who like take money out of your pockets without even knowing what you are like signing or doing. So that's pretty cool. We're also building something that we call the Aragon Network, which is our solution to a couple of hurdles of issues that we found on the way to making decentralized organizations widespread. So one of the issues is upgradability, how you make sure that your organization stays up to date, that you have the latest version of the software, that you don't have like a buggy version like the DAO had and like bad shit happened. So you want to make sure that that kind of stuff doesn't happen. And secondly, we're also fixing kind of decentralized arbitration. So with the smart contracts, you can make sure that for example, if I hire an employee, that employee will get their his shares, his stock, for example, and also his salary, and nobody can tamper with that. Not me, not the employee. It's a smart contract on the Ethereum blockchain, that's it. However, humans are kind of very interesting kind of, living beings, and so with a lot of very random stuff, a lot of context, a lot of human behavior that is very hard for the Ethereum blockchain or for any machine to grasp. And so we are building this kind of decentralized jurisdiction in which you can basically have like a Supreme Court, even not a Supreme Court, just like a prediction marketplace of judges that are basically able to arbitrate your deeper disputes in your organization. So we believe that's key for decentralized organizations to happen at scale. So we are pretty much looking at Delaware. Delaware is an awesome place to run businesses. I guess Zug is also like an awesome place. So we have looked at these places, what they have in common, and it's great because they attract investors, they give security to investors, they give security to entrepreneurs, they attract this kind of environment and ecosystem, and finally they make a huge a great network of people, and they create network effects because if I'm an investor, for example, and you're an entrepreneur and you don't have a company set up, I would probably say you gotta create a Delaware C Corp for me to put money in there. So this creates huge network effects. So we are trying to build kind of that, the Delaware of decentralized organizations. And it's very cool because with DAOs, you can like make the DAO self-upgradable. So it is a living organism of its own. And the token holders from that DAO, that huge decentralized jurisdiction that it's the Aragon network, can vote to change every single parameter of this DAO. And so that results in kind of it being a living organism that changes over time to maximize its power to create wealth. and it's very cool that we can, like, as human beings, create like other living organisms. So yeah, very pumped to be here, and I guess we can now start with the panel and the discussion. Yeah, everybody's we'll sit here. And, yeah, you guys can also come here. Yeah.
Go.
Cool. So I have some questions prepared. Nothing very formal. If you guys wanna answer any question as well, that would be great. So I think what we have like all in common here, like all the projects here, is that we are one of the like top-notch projects regarding design and UX. I think, you know, from the moment I download AKASHA, for example, to the moment I tried out Status, and I think I sent a message to one of you guys, you didn't reply. That was great because when you know, Bitcoin, like, or even Ethereum, like a year ago, or Bitcoin 4 years ago, you were trying out stuff and it was like command line stuff or whatever. And now we're seeing how, you know, in the case of you guys, you mentioned that you already have users using your app daily. So it's kind of a question for both you guys. What do you think is the role of design and UX in creating blockchain projects? So you can maybe get started.
In our case, after the first prototypes, which were black text on a white page, the classic, we decided that we want to make things simple to use, but significant in the way they work in the background. So instead of forcing the user to download an Ethereum client, open the command line, you already lose 90% of the people. Type in some command line, you lose another 9%, so there's maybe still going up. So maybe. Yeah. In our case, we managed to bundle together an Ethereum client, the GET client, and an IPFS client. And basically, when you are installing the application on your computer becomes an Ethereum node and an IPFS node. So your computer is on its own a node in the network. But in the end, why did you download the application in the first place? Maybe you wanted an alternative to Medium or to Facebook or to Twitter. What's important to you is the ability to publish information online and you know, have self-determination when it comes to does that information stay online or not. It's not up to some platform to decide if your account can be still used by you, or it can be frozen or deleted, or all your pictures and blog posts lost. It happened many times. So in our case, the user cares about that sort of thing, not about configuring the Ethereum client and IPFS ports because there's some conflict with whatever else he has installed. So from the get-go, when we download the application, we have like some sort of Windows 95, 98 style, you know, some pictures, some text, and in the background you have like a status downloading the Ethereum client. So the person just has to let the application, it's downloading the Ethereum client, it's configuring the Ethereum client and the private network we're using for tests, the IPFS node, and the synchronization starts. Right? So in about 5 minutes or so, we're also using the awesome Ethereum Lite client mentioned by the status team here. We haven't released yet the version with the Lite client, but basically it means that we have greatly reduced the sync time, which was and the blockchain size, which was a problem in itself. And we are now undergoing a code refactoring and a major redesign where we try to apply the insights we gained during this 5 months of public testing, and I think it's going to be great because we're also going to have a web version. The content published through this network will be accessible through every IPFS network node, and the application itself, and maybe you can also talk about that a bit, will be actually living on the IPFS network. So any IPFS node and gateway from everywhere can access the data published on the Ethereum network and IPFS. And for the user, in the end, that's what matters. They want their content to be there and found by people. We're also using Whisper. We created like an IRC style, the old school chat rooms for people to interact, again, same protocol. And I think once we move past the alpha and the testing stage, these projects will come together, like, you know, Power Rangers unite, of sorts, and something that not even us can comprehend now can be born from this cooperation.
Mm-hmm.
So in our case, just to sum it up, design was at its core an attempt to make it simple to use for users, inviting to learn actually what's happening in the background, because you can click view details and immerse yourself in that, but leave it up to the user. Don't force him to make all those hard steps, and just give him what he's interested in. Simple and significant.
That's it. What about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to the user experience and like just wanting to use something that's not threatening. Like a lot of the Bitcoin wallets and all these sort of things, they kind of like, they're kind of weird, you know? Like you kind of like you feel like you're hacking something even though you don't know how to hack, you know? And just like removing all that threatening sort of feeling about it and just making it super familiar and just making it a great user experience. Like, you know, like you look at Apple and the way that they design their computers, like they are just nice computers, and if you can emulate that, even become like 50 to 70% as good as that sort of experience, I think you're definitely on the right track. Anything else to add?
Not really. Actually, I would say like, although this technology is so exciting for us, just to the average person, they don't really care about all the protocols that's being used in the background. And so it's all about just creating convenience. And if you can focus on that through user experience, you should definitely do that.
Without sacrificing privacy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, privacy. Yeah. So, so also you guys mentioned that you're working on this model of governance for people to actually, you know, kind of own status in the end, right?
Right.
So what do you think is the role of a community in a blockchain project? Because it seems like it's much more deeper than like in a normal startup or whatever.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like if you look at Twitter, for example, 10% of all Twitter accounts are bots. Right. They're just so cheap to create. And 10% of Twitter accounts, like in terms of monthly active users, is like I think it was 50 million.
Yeah.
50 million, something ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because they're so cheap, and the people who are doing that, they have no stake in the actual platform itself. They can basically just extract value from it. But if you start raising that barrier and you start to have like people creating, like basically using their attention and curating the content on that, then they have more control over their lives, and they have more control over like helping other people. It's kind of like a community watch almost, where if you see some bad guy on the street, you can all kind of get rid of him. In a legally safe way. But yeah, like I think in terms of governance, being able to make just like real decisions and voting on like what new features get implemented is something that we're doing. We've created a commit.eth, which is a GitHub bounty bot, and it allows us to essentially create bounties for issues on GitHub. GitHub is this sort of source control, is where you develop your software on. So then what's great about that is developers can come along and see this little pot of gold and go, okay, I can solve this problem, and they'll get paid for that. And we can literally decentralize, like doing this, we can decentralize our software development, and people can actually have a say in how that software gets developed.
Yeah. What do you think, Mihai?
I think the community is very important, and you know, we were talking about earlier about DAOs and why they're cool. I have a different perspective, and it complements everything. While many people talk about AI and like how awesome it's going to be and all the improvement it can bring, I think we still have a way to go until a sentient AI, you know, like in the sci-fi. Not Skynet, some friendly AI hopefully will materialize. And in the meantime, I think we have these new tools that offer us the possibility to come together, and you know, it lowers the cost of coordination, and in the end that was the original purpose of the company as an entity, because we cannot do everything on our own. We need other people to agree, come together and work towards a common goal. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, apparently there is this sort of collective intelligence that manifests when you're talking about groups, and it's like no matter how brilliant you are, the sum of all the parts is greater than each of the members of the community. And I think if you put and create an environment where you allow and use the feedback provided by the community, that in itself is like the first step in tapping into this potential that's just laying dormant there. So whereas other companies in the old school setup were spending most of the money keeping the people out, like you go through boring interviews, you come back again and all that mentality. In this paradigm, you're focusing your energy and resources in making it as easy as possible to onboard people. So, and we designed, just to briefly put that in there, we are now looking into applying a user-centric design methodology or a process in which basically we have a version or two ahead of time online for users to actually interact with before we start developing it. And we have this like opportunity to collect feedback, and maybe just someone comes up and brilliantly say, why are you trying to do this way when you could do it some other even better way? So we eliminate all the guessing work, which can be right and most of the time is wrong. And again, you cut away from the effort that you need to put in developing the not so optimal interface in the first place. So again, as long as you can tap into that community that's forming around your project, I think it's the best possible thing you can. And that, after all, it's all about network effects, and what's the best way of achieving that.
That's very interesting, because you're also touching upon like the living organism thing. Like there's this DAO, which is like people are contributing to it, and it ends up being kind of a living organism that is having some like natural evolution. So this is gonna be weird, but I'm gonna ask Jorge about because we're gonna build something very similar to that with the Argon network, and I would love if you can like explain everyone how it works and like why we think that it's the same approach to creating kind of a digital jurisdiction in the world.
The Argon network?
Yeah.
Okay. We think like it makes kind of sense. Like people in that there are some things like that are cheaper and possible at scale. So like you cannot have like a court for your company and your friend's company, because if like you're not going to be able to like solve a problem with another company that you will interact with. So I think that's the interesting part of bringing companies together or organizations together and kind of like taking a bit of money from everyone and end up paying these public services. Also, like the good thing about it, it's like it's only opt-in. Like no one is forced to like join this network. Maybe the network effects will in the future, but I think that I don't feel bad about that. Like if people end up like all going there and you cannot afford personally to go out, it's not the same thing as like going to jail if you decide not to pay taxes in your country. So yeah, I think that's the thing.
That's very cool. So so I think we're gonna like touch upon this other like very hot thing right now, which is what do you guys think of the token sale ecosystem right now and what's happening? Because I mean the crypto space is crazy by itself, right? Ether is like at $80 or whatever. But also the token sale ecosystem has felt like it's kind of booming. Things are also the project that starts with the letter G and their recent token sale. I don't know if you So
the G sale.
The G sale. Yeah. So what do you think of, is the market totally rational? Are people just freaking out and like giving their money to everyone? Like what's your position on that?
I think we are seeing more or less a mirroring of the early .com bubble. In this case, we have a new sort of medium and new possibilities, but the pattern is the same. Someone comes with an idea, doesn't matter how good it is, and then gets a lot of money, and either because of incompetence or because of scamming intentions, the original promise is not delivered. So it happened previously with websites for pet food, raising hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, and there are many examples out there. And in this case, I think the community in general is adapting and learning. For example, the Diego disaster was sort of like a painful lesson for many. Up until that point, it was all pink, I feel, like in the community. Yay! Yay! To the moon! But then that sort of hit the problem. It was an entire ride. Luckily, everything turned out okay in the end. But getting back to the ICOs and so on, I think one of the things that can be improved, so we don't talk so much about what's wrong, is that people should, and the projects in general, should not focus only on the theoretical side, which contains assumptions. This is how we think things will work, because most of the time, because one, the technology is super early, and most things don't work as expected because reasons. And then on the other side, you have people which are unpredictable by their nature. They might not want the thing you assume they will, and so on. So, for example, just to give a parallel, the design that you will see if you download AKASHA and run it now was made a year ago. So it took us a year to actually implement that stuff. So I can only imagine that the white paper describing how everything works, it's going to take a lot more to implement. So by this time, in just 5 years from Bitcoin and the idea that the blockchain can be used as a way to, digital cash online, in 5 years you had Ethereum, which is like, hey, we can use this actually to build a worldwide computer. So just the underlying foundations on top of which you can build your solution are evolving so fast that maybe by the time you get luckily to implement your solution, your assumptions might be, obsolete, to call it that way. And it's good to also balance the theoretical side with experimentation and to test your assumptions, because that eliminates some of the problems for the projects that are really willing to put the work and make the idea happen, and simply end up not delivering because things didn't work out as planned.
Yeah, well, I think that's like really important. Like, we got to remember that everything we're doing is literally an experiment. Bitcoin is still an experiment. Like, okay, yeah, we're throwing some money in behind it, makes it serious, but everyone who's like, well, the original core developers still treat it like an experiment. And Ethereum is just a newer experiment. And then everything we're doing on Ethereum, oh my god, that's like bleeding edge experiments. And we're taking these hypotheses and these ideas and we're throwing them out there. I mean, the whole idea of doing a Dutch auction was just to experiment with a different crowdfunding model. And well, okay, maybe that's, okay, we'll go back to the drawing board, I don't know.
I wonder what would have happened if the original number would have been infinity. They were saying like
they will have sold like one token for like $1 billion.
Well, we can throw up another experiment and see what happens.
Yeah.
Not us, but yeah.
So let's take a.
At what point does it stop being an experiment? I've asked this question where I work.
Yeah, it's a really.
I mean, is it a function of market capitalization? At what point do people start taking it seriously?
That's a really good question.
I mean, I ask it at work, saying,
Yeah.
Because people laughed at Bitcoin years ago.
Right.
They're still laughing at it today.
Yeah. Well, I
20
think
billion market cap.
Yeah.
And so is it a function of market cap where
I think
at
it's
some
like-
point you can't ignore it anymore?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, even with the internet, like when it first started, people were just kind of like, oh, what's this? Or it's like a fad or something. But I think it's really like, I don't have any like definite answer, but I imagine it's just a matter of like just getting distribution out there and eventually everybody is using it. It just permeates our daily lives. And Bitcoin isn't there yet either,
From what I see, it's really about being taken seriously.
Yeah.
And from my position where I'm working, what is taken seriously is AUM, right? It's
Right.
capitalization, play.
Right.
So I'm always asking, okay, so that's great. We had 20 billion in Bitcoin and 35 billion in everything together.
Right.
But at what point do we say it's not an experiment? At what
Right.
point do we say
Well, I mean,
it's serious?
Sure, but I mean, like 30 billion is still like
Right.
infinitesimally small compared to our trillion-dollar markets, right? So,
I like, sorry, just to, I think the experiment-driven mindset is healthy at
Yes.
this point because that the entire thing is an experiment, and you need to map out what works and what doesn't. And in case one project fails, it's good to have other projects exploring solutions in this space, because in the end, the fundamental problems that are faced as a society, like the big picture, are too important to get caught in like.
You're absolutely right.
So it's good experiments at this point that the market and time will show which is the most stable experiment in the long run, I think.
yeah.
I think I understood 10% or maybe 5% of what you guys are speaking about. My question is, we just spent 25 years of evolution, of coming to worldwide standardization.
Right.
What I understand from what you are saying is that you are trying to copy the functionalities which sort of exist. Aren't you, again, working back? So try to explain to me, why isn't it a hype? Because I know there are more people who think it's a hype. Because you are trying to again work against evolution. We have already 25 years of standardization.
I don't necessarily think it's working against evolution. I think it's actually the next step of evolution. I think what we're doing, a lot of the sort of Ethereum sort of marketing is kind of building the next version of the internet. Like, I'm not sure if that's true necessarily, but what is interesting is we're now bringing economic sort of functions into the fabric of the net itself. Our current internet, like TCP/IP, is kind of flawed. Like, I mean, you can still DOS and you can take down computers and all these sort of things. It doesn't cost anybody to do anything. All they need to do is have a couple of machines there and just send packets out, like send messages out over the internet, and that can take down another server. But what if that started costing them to do that? You know, like you can start reducing things like spam and kind of start clearing away some of the stuff that isn't working so well in our current internet. And maybe we can make it better in the future.
And yeah, and also there is like the sociological part of it. Like if we basically fight wars with economic incentives and not with guns, we can end up with a world that is slightly better than what we have now, with drones killing people in the Middle East and everything. So, and I think it's possible for the first time, and it's not just like you know, some ideological freaks that are out there talking about privacy or freedom or whatever. It's just that it's more. Okay, it is. We're privacy freaks. Okay, but that being said, like we are what we are building and what platforms like Ethereum let us do is we can like incentivize behaviors, and we can incentivize behaviors. So it's not that you agree to something or you have some values that you like privacy or whatever. It's that you are economically incentivized to do certain things, and so in the long run, that may stop wars. We may, fight wars with economic incentives. We may live in a borderless planet in which, we don't have like any centralized jurisdiction. We have like decentralized world. We have like, platforms that have all of our knowledge, which is borderless, which is impossible to censor. So I think it all comes down to building like, not like a global computer like maybe Ethereum is, but Ethereum lets us build a truly global society of people that can work in a much better way than what we have right now, which is the rocket.
I'd like to add just on this. You mentioned standardization, and one of the problems is that we have all these silos with standards which are not compatible, or they cannot talk to each other. So, for example, blockchains can offer a really well-suited layer for agreeing and using certain standards in a transparent way, while aligning your, what do I need this standard for? And second, if you think about the concept of companies, corporations, these were invented somewhere around the 1800s, right? Mm-hmm. We didn't have internet back then. We didn't have the landline. So in the meantime, the communication and the way the entire concept was taught, the society for which it was designed evolved to this to today, where you have a supercomputer in your pocket, more powerful than the computer that took the first man to the moon, and you're communicating with each other at light speed across the globe. So it's evolution, and it's only normal to have a new form of organization that is better suited for this environment. And I think the present solutions are not.
I mean, and like, say that, like, okay, there's this whole idea of crypto economics and all these sort of like economic mechanism design and all these sort of fancy kind of complex things. But at the end of the day, like, if all of that fails and all we do is reduce transaction costs, that is so fundamentally powerful. I mean, if you have an accountant and like you have like you're spending things on your credit card and you have to like collect all these receipts, and then you have to go dump on the accountant's desk, and then they're talking to some government. Like there's just so many steps that are involved in that, which we can essentially eliminate, assuming we can put on people onto this sort of private money.
Yeah, I understand, because that's one of the biggest selling point of cryptocurrency is that it cuts down the transaction cost.
Right.
But then still, it isn't penetrating the market.
It's not.
It's not penetrating the market. The market is
Giving
not
time.
In the same way, IP, like TCP/IP didn't penetrate the market. It was the internet. It was email. I mean, like we're still like figuring out the protocol layer. I mean, Ethereum is not even 1.0 ready yet.
Yeah.
So we're like, I mean, and I think what you said, like going back 25 years, I think in some sense it is, because like I think it's time to assume like the original version of the internet, like we fucked it up. And like it doesn't work like the email, like you don't have like, you don't need to like you don't only get to talk to your Gmail friends, like you can have your email server and people can talk to you from Gmail or from Hotmail or from wherever, and that doesn't happen what is going on today. Like you cannot send like not even like a Facebook Messenger message to WhatsApp, and they are owned by the same company, and you're texting. Like you cannot do that. And crypto economic incentives might solve that, and I think that's why this is like kind of the chance of doing the internet right again. It might not be the case, but I think like there are a lot of interesting things that are being worked on. Like some of them might stick, and I think like the project, like the problem why crypto isn't going forward is like because there are no products for using them. Like my grandma is using the internet today, but she isn't using it because she's a fan of TCP/IP. She uses it because she can send me WhatsApps. So I think like the problem is like that there are not nice products today, and I think like what the guys at Status are doing and AKASHA too, like it's going to be like some like what Ethereum and Bitcoin, like they need like these really good like mainstream usage application that it's really the killer app. And like I mean like people like cryptocurrency will thrive when people don't know that they're using it. In the same way my grandma doesn't know about TCP/IP or IP or whatever.
Or maybe if you come with a new functionality like WhatsApp or Facebook or whatever, they're completely new ideas. Maybe if you come out with absolute new functionality that blazes through the market. I
mean, I think peer-to-peer money is very big. Like, I have a credit card right here that is kind of digital money. Can anyone accept me my credit card and make a $5 transaction? It doesn't work like that. Like, digital cash is not here yet. Like, but I can hand you a €5 bill. And I think that cryptocurrency, like peer-to-peer cash, is like really big.
Well, they already exist, of course, P2P on mobile phones. There are the normal fiat applications.
Yeah, but it's usually national.
Yeah, that's true. It's national.
And not truly peer-to-peer. Like there's a guy that is taking a CAD, and then Visa is taking its CAD, and
and they're watching over you. Like,
How much does he have?
And then they collect the data about yourself and the smartphone identity, and then you receive ads on Facebook. Maybe you're interested in some of the purchases you've made through the
and then you cannot even like send money because you don't have anything, because you have to spend everything on the ads that they show you.
Right.
So
Hey, you made that embarrassing purchase that one time.
So how many years each of you actually give to your companies to really start bringing some value instead of just only spending and making the exercises?
Well, I guess we're pushing to have like a sort of like we hope to have beta in Q3, and hopefully the first Q1 of 2018 is somewhere we're going to start looking at doing user acquisition.
So for us, it's going to be like a year from now when we deploy the Aragon network, and so we will have our business model on top of that. So I think a year from now, and then okay. So, well,
somewhere around the end of the year as well.
Guys, you will still be around here, and I know there's a lot of questions, but since these guys are still
Just
around,
started.
So let's
Maybe just a bit.
two more questions.
So let's do the following thing before. Okay, and then we do 1 minute or 30 seconds each to like finish up, and then that's it.
Okay.
I've been there for now.
Oh, you too.
IPFS Mihai, I thought that was still science fiction. Can we connect to IPFS today, and is it easy?
Yes. For example, if you type in ipfs.pics, I think, it's a copycat of imgur.com. It's a website where especially Reddit users upload photos. So in this case, the website at ipfs.pics is a gateway, a node that serves the information from the network and helps users to upload information into
So we
the
can
network.
use it already?
Yes.
Great.
Storage is not good, is it?
Cool. I think we can take one last question.
Yeah, one?
Yeah. Okay.
So you're talking about user experience, and then I realized that what you are developing, which is amazing, no? It's basically used by nerds, right? Like freaky people, and it doesn't really have in mind the need of my daughters, for example, the people that they are not into this.
Yeah.
Aren't you afraid that at the moment that this starts becoming like, okay, this is now usable for everybody, then nobody sees value there outside of the the freakies?
Yeah. Yeah. So the question for those in the back was why does it matter for like normal users? Aren't we afraid that we are targeting like a very small community of nerds? So in our case, we want to push it even to so my mother can use it. So if my mother can use it, then it's fine.
Yo uso menos de testar then.
Not now, but like a year from now, that's kind of my goal. So that's in perspective.
When you are out already.
we're trying to make it extremely easy so everyone on the planet can actually create it, and it will be even easier than creating a company. That's our goal. It has to be even easier than a traditional method. Yeah. You guys.
I think the user-centric design, getting in touch with your community, and from time to time walk outside your bubble, ask people from the street, and that are not familiar, especially with the Ethereum and geeky stuff. Even if it's going to be a small niche of people using the service, in the end, the main idea is that if push comes to shove and we will be faced with an internet where it's 1984, there is an alternative out there that can be used by everyone. So even if it was born, even the internet was a grassroots movement with guys with beards and freakies, right? And now look at us, all of us are using it. So hopefully, with a bit of luck,
There was no alternative by then.
Yeah, cool. So I guess let's do 30 seconds each with whatever you guys want to say to the audience, and then we
can
finish.
start from there also.
Yeah, sure. So I guess Mihai kind of touched on this before, but the idea of creating these sort of global crypto economic communities that have no borders and everybody has real skin in the game. It's like this new form of organizational structure, and I think that's going to be a very, very powerful thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's also really interesting is even though we might be starting in this sort of small crypto space, if you have users who are literally stakeholders within the network, and they now have an economic interest or incentive to bring other people into the network because they increase the value of the network and therefore their own profits. So I think that you can start to have this sort of very, very strong network effects that start to cascade out from there.
Yeah, I really have nothing to say. So.
Okay, yes, I guess we are very pumped to be running this experiment that the Argon network is going to be, and as you guys said, it's super important to have this kind of experiments in which users are part of it. I guess we will in the next year we will see multiple experiments that are like that, and I'm so pumped to see one of them be successful and the whole network to be successful. Just think about this, the token that has more market capitalization right now, not like Ethereum or Bitcoin, the token based on Ethereum that has most market cap is over with over 100 million. it's nothing. We are just at the tip of the iceberg. Then just like a final shameless plug, we are doing a token sale on May 17th. So yeah, we are doing a token sale. Yay! All yours.
I think touching upon what you said, the value created from this is the knowledge itself acquired while doing these experiments, and it's not just us here at the table. There are thousands of other developers, each working on the different problems from their own perspective. So just through this trial and error process, I think the knowledge that can be used by someone that maybe not us, maybe will fail miserably, but those that will arrive after us will have something to look back and say, okay, maybe we won't do this. And then they can explore further in the search for the optimal solution.
So we hope that you documented very well and it's available already on the distribution.
Yes.
Cool. Well, thanks everyone. Let's have some drinks and enjoy. Yeah.
Thanks.